It's been revealed that former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev was eavesdropped on during the G20 Summit in London back in 2009. According to a report in the Guardian newspaper, other foreign politicians' communications were also intercepted. Well, the revelation emerges as Britain prepares to host the G8 Summit, which kicks off on Monday. RT contributor Afshin Rattansi joins us live now for some perspective on this. The US government has said that the PRISM surveillance program was aimed at averting terrorism threats. So what justification is there then, do you think, for eavesdropping on a global leader?
This was obviously nothing to do with terrorism whatsoever. You know, I'm just in a studio talking to you just down the river from that G20 2009 conference where it turns out, it may be, that President Medvedev was, and so many other world leaders were bugged. We know Edward Snowden, if this is true, he has terabytes of this data. There's going to be more of it coming. No, this was about the 2009 critical summit when the crisis in Western capitalism hit its peak. Gordon Brown here was saying we must put $1 trillion into the world's financial institutions, which of course arguably caused the crash, and whatever happens at all stakes. They wanted this to happen. They wanted to have continuous surveillance over media, over foreign governments, over foreign institutions, because they were desperate not to have any other types of movement try and create something out of that 2009 G20 summit, where it was famous here because riot police murdered Ian Tomlinson, a newspaper vendor, and there were riots on the streets. This was how desperate this government was to create a neoliberal model. The theme of that G20 summit was globalization must be seen as a force for good.
Are you saying that this kind of surveillance could be used to influence the course of international talks?
I think that kind of blanket surveillance, we're talking about fake internet cafes allegedly being set up, BlackBerries routinely monitored, Turkish, for instance, they mentioned the Turkish finance minister, but they said other officials too. Yes, that surveillance was being used, and of course with their other agents, presumably they were trying to make those talks amenable to Washington and British interests. We must remember, of course, might not be the British that were responsible for this. I mean, this is in a sense to the core of what he was talking about. This happened presumably with RAF Menwith Hill in Harrogate in Yorkshire, and there's a demonstration on July the 4th here about that. These kinds of revelations show that when governments such as Britain and the United States come close to worrying, they will use this to try and persuade different officials of different governments to sway them.
Well, you're linking the US and Britain there in this issue then. So what role did the UK play in all this, in your opinion?
For many years, since the 1960s, when we had some revelations that the secret services here were trying to overthrow the government of Harold Wilson, Britain knew, or some British people realized, that the National Security Agency was basically using the United Kingdom as an aircraft carrier. The 421st Airborne Division is in Yorkshire, and the largest spying outfit of the United States is here in Britain. But who runs the spying? Where is the sovereignty? Already we've had legislation here that seems to protect the British government from being taken to the International Criminal Court for the kind of thing that Edward Snowden has revealed to us.
And could other summits have been monitored then?
Well, of course, this is what the delegates assembling in Ireland, or occupied Ireland as some around the world see it, in the next 48 hours, because how many other summits have been bugged? The problem with this kind of revelation is there seems to be a kind of lazy acceptance in the media, and we must remember there are revelations about how the media are run in this country and how close they are to the spying authorities or secret agents that seem to be running this kind of thing. Saying that, well, you know, they're trying to protect us, and they've got to stop subversives, they've got to stop Russian spies or foreign spies. This kind of lazy drift into 1984 Orwellian McCarthyite-style government seems to be all over the media at the moment. But certainly, if they're monitoring other summits, US authorities don't seem that worried. President Obama doesn't, and of course, previous Vice President Dick Cheney said in the past few hours that Edward Snowden is a traitor. As far as I know, he is alive at the moment.
And you mentioned the G8 summit coming up, of course, this week. I mean, can this lead to tensions among world leaders if they think they're being monitored while all this is going on?
Of course, amongst world elites, there will be, I suppose, a level of mirth as they eat the most expensive food in the world. I suppose we'll get details of those menus, at least, if not the negotiations. But more seriously, I think some of those world leaders should definitely be asking serious questions, perhaps at the United Nations, as to how Britain thinks it can get away with this, and certainly be asking David Cameron what sort of government is being run at the moment, because this government is refusing to answer any questions about the Snowden leaks. The Foreign Secretary William Hague here saying, oh, well, you know, he can't say he can't give us any information about it because it's secret. There's going to be mounting pressure as these Snowden leaks get bigger and bigger and bigger. Here we have this Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, and the British government will be hiding behind that and continuing to tell other leaders at the G8 and those participants who aren't members of the richest 8 countries at the summit in Ireland that all is well and, you know, everything is fine. Obviously, people will be using much more secure and encrypted methods and will show that this kind of spying operation is idiotic.
And if global leaders are not safe from having their communications intercepted, what about the fate of the general public?
Well, of course, this goes to the heart of what Edward Snowden is trying to say. I mean, his interlocutor, in a sense, Glenn Greenwald, and I've got to say that the latest revelations are the Hong Kong government is now investigating Snowden revelations that the National Security Agency is spying on the Hong Kong government. He's saying he supports the United States Constitution, and his complete fealty is to that US Constitution. So what other governments will say about this and how this is going to play out. The problem is the mainstream media will try and poo-poo this and say, everyone knows this. If everyone knew this, and if all world leaders and all delegates at that summit in 2009 know that they are being surveilled, then why do the British or American authorities do this here in London?
And could this affect US-Russia relations now and in the future?
Of course, they have been tricky in recent years. There have been various spying scandals. I suppose we can expect some comments from President Putin. He didn't. This came too late for the press conference between the British Prime Minister and Mr. Putin here in London. I presume other world leaders will be mentioning it in the days ahead. But for British people, this is lamentable because there's a long history here of mining, the miners, the Ford workers. Usually they're jailed here, the whistleblowers from GCHQ, and we have countless CND, the anti-apartheid movement. Perhaps British people will realize that they are living in a state where their media and all institutions surrounding them, all industrial aspects to civic society, are under a kind of surveillance state that is not being covered in the news. And alas, it had to take this guy working in Hawaii, a former private contractor, to reveal all to the British people. I have to tell you already, I've noticed in the past few hours since the story came out, very little coverage. I wonder how the British and American press will be covering this revelation.
OK, RT contributor Ashley Ratanti, thanks very much for joining us here live on RT today. Thank you.